Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Hope everybody's staying safe. Okay. Today we are learning about radicals. Okay, and inequalities. We're gonna learn of how to graph those radicals. First of all, how to solve those radicals, and we have to graph them. Okay. We have to find domain and range on those. So our problem for today is we have y equals radical of 3x minus 2. Okay? Notice that since we're dealing with radicals, the goal is to never have a negative in the radical, because then you start dealing with negative numbers, imaginary numbers, then they become complex. Okay? What we're trying to do is we're trying to equal this radical to 0, because radical to 0 is just 0. The way we do that is we get the inside. We get 3x minus 2 equals 0. Once we have that, we know that we can move things around to solve for x. So we have plus 2, because remember, you cannot move the variable or the number with the variable. Yet, always, the first thing to do is move your constant, okay? So we're left with 3x. Whatever we do to one side, we do to the other. So 0 plus 2 equals 2. And then finally, we're trying to solve for x. If you still don't know this, the opposite of multiplication is division. So we divide by 3. So we're left with x equals 2/3, okay? Because that's what we have left, because we cancel out 3's. Since we have x equals 2/3, y equals in this equation. Y equals. Remember, the whole point of this is to have the radical equal to 0. So radical of 0 is just 0. So y equals 0. Because we plug in 2/3 into here, we have radical of 3 times 2/3 minus 2. 3, there's always a 1 under, because there's always under a full number under a 1 to make it into a fraction. 3 times 2 is 6. 1 times 3 is 3. Minus 2. 3 can go into 6 2 times. Okay? So 2 minus 2 equals 0. Okay? That's why y equals 0. Now that we have that, that is always our starting point. Okay? 2/3 and 0. Now that we have that, we can actually do a little table for a few points. So let's do our x. Let's do our y. Our starting point again is 2/3. And our y was 0. Now we're going to pick a few more points in here. Okay? If you notice, try to pick numbers that give you mostly a full number. Okay? We can also, if you want to deal with fractions, that's fine. Okay? But I know for some of us, fractions are a little scary. Okay? We don't really want to deal with fractions. What I'm going to do, I'm going to deal with full numbers, which in this case, I'm going to do 1, 2, and 3, okay? Those are the numbers I'm going to deal with full numbers. So I have a 1, we're going to plug it in to the original equation, okay? We have 3x minus 2. So instead of the x, now we're going to have 3 times 1 minus 2 inside the radical. Now that we have that, 3 times 1 is 3 minus 2 equals 1, right? Because 3 minus 2 is 1. 1 is inside the radical, remember. So the radical of 1 is just 1, right? Because 1 is just 1. So we have 1. Then we do the same thing for the 2. We have 3 times 2. Okay? So I'm going to put it over here. 3 times 2 minus 2. All inside the radical. So we have 3 times 2 is 6. Minus 2, which is 4. Remember, it's still inside the radical. The square root of 4 is 2, right? 2. So we have 2. And then finally, we plug in 3. So 3 times 3 is 6, right? 9. 3 times 3 is 9. I got overexcited here and looked at the 6 over here. So 3 times 3 is 9 minus 2, 7, right? Radical of 7. Since we have a radical of 7, I'm going to turn it into an actual decimal. Makes it a lot easier to graph, okay? So I have my calculator here. I'm going to type in radical of 7. And it gave me 2.645 and so on. I'm just going to round it up to 2 so we have 2.645 so on. I'm just going to round it up this to 2.7 because the 5 will make this 4 into a 5. That will make this into a 7. So I'm going to round it to 2.7. Okay? So it's between 2.5 and 3. Okay? Now that we have those 3 numbers in there, or 4 should I say, because your starting point, we can actually start graphing it. Make sure you write everything down on your notes. I'm going to step out here for a second so you guys can pause it if you guys have to. Write everything down. All right, so now that you guys have it on your notes, I'm going to go ahead and erase stuff in here. All right, guys. So now that you guys have the chart, we're going to actually graph it. Let's choose another color here. Okay, so now we're going to graph the first one. Notice that it says 2/3, okay? It's not 1, it's not 0, okay? It's a little above half on the x-axis. So if we have 0, then we have a 1. Hopefully you guys can see that 1. Okay, we have that 1. So the 2/3 and 0, okay? We're not going to go anywhere on the y. We're going to stay on 0, and we're going to go 2/3. So we're going to have our point close to 1, okay? Hopefully you guys can see it. Now that we have that, we have 1 and 1. So we're going to go to 1, but we're also going to go 1 on y. So 1 and 1. We have our second dot. Then we have a 2 and a 2. We have our third dot. And then we have 3 on the x-axis. So we're going to go to 3. But notice that on the y, we have 2.7, okay? So 1, 2, and then we're going to have 3 here. But we're not going to go all the way to 3. We're going to go a little lower below 3. And then 3. Now we're going to connect our dots, okay? Remember, the first one you start off with. And then you connect your dots. And there we graphed our inequality. Or in this case, we graphed our equation, okay? When it comes to inequalities, if it was the same one, the same was y, y less than radical, and it was 3x minus 2. When it comes like that, you still find the same point. It's still the same equation. The only difference is when you're dealing with inequality, you usually shade. Okay? So since y is less than, we will shade everything below. Okay? Below our graph. If it was greater than, we will shade above our graph. Okay? For domain and range. Domain is your x, range is your y. Okay? So domain is all positive numbers above 2/3. Okay? Because it keeps getting bigger on your x. For your y, all positive numbers, okay, including 0. Because 0 is not a positive or a negative, it's just a natural number. So all positive numbers, including 0, is your range. Okay? And that's it. We find domain, range, inequalities, okay? How to shade. That's all we're doing, okay? Just find me the original point, or starting point, and then 3 more points. So here's your assignment for today. All right, guys, so your assignment for today is, we have y equals radical of 2x, and then we have y equals radical of 2x plus 5. Okay? Those are our 2 examples for today, or your 2 assignments for today. Make sure you submit your answers, okay? As soon as you're done watching the video, make sure you submit also a picture of your notes, so I know you're taking notes, okay? And I'll be here waiting for your email.